Welcome to the Cowtown Cats Lacrosse Podcast, where we talk all things Panther City Lacrosse Club. Now here are your hosts, Nicholas and Andy.
Well, even though the offseason for the NLL is in full swing, that doesn't mean there isn't lacrosse to talk about. Welcome everyone to the Cowtown Cats Lacrosse Podcast. I'm Nicholas, joined by Andy.
Hello.
Andy, it's been a few months since the end of Panther City's season, but that doesn't mean there isn't things happening, not only in the world of lacrosse, but even for Panther City. The summer so far has seen the World's Lacrosse Men's Championship, and we'll also talk a little bit of Panther City news.
Yep, it is technically the off season for the league, but the World of Lacrosse stops for no one, so got a lot of stuff going on.
Well, and it's cool because, as I mentioned beforehand, I mean, it not only was like the World Lacrosse Men's Championship, really hyped, not only for the World of Lacrosse, but it was also hyped in the NLL because, I mean, they had a lot of people going and representing their countries. It's starting by, just talking about it. It was held in San Diego, which the first game was held at that Snapdragon Stadium where they had the first NLL, the first NLL box lacrosse game was San Diego this last year. And so, you have this new stadium, you have all these teams representing their countries, and the NLL had no shortage of players that wanted to go represent their countries. 55 NLL players were selected to represent, including, Liam Burns, who we know, Jeff Teat, Austin Stotts, Dylan Ward, of course, the Thompson brothers, Jeremy and Lyle, and even Panther City's Brooker Muir. Not to mention the guy who we just interviewed last episode, Nick Coyne with Team USA.
Yeah, it was great to see a bunch of familiar faces, either former teammates or, like you said, with Brooker, guys that are currently on the team that like to play nationally as well. And yeah, we had that really fun interview with Nick before this one, and so it's just cool to see the different levels of involvement that people have on the national stage.
Well, and so, we're obviously not going to talk about the entire tournament. You're talking about, a bunch of countries all in the same area, fighting for that gold medal to be called, the best in the world as far as lacrosse goes. But we wanted to touch on some highlights. I'll start off with a side highlight. So obviously we know the Buffalo versus Colorado was in the finals. And Buffalo ended up winning the NLL championship this week, or not this week, but this year. And Dylan Ward, who we know plays for Colorado, he's a pretty big guy. He's not a goalie for no reason, but he really wanted to represent Canada, and he wanted to represent them so bad that in a span of a month, because we're talking the end of the season all the way till June, like mid-June, he lost 20 pounds and able to be selected for that team for Canada to represent them.
Yeah, it was so interesting seeing him play because obviously in the games that Panther City played against Colorado, you only really see the goalies covered in pads unless they take them off at the end of the game or something. So Dylan Ward, by our impressions, is a big guy. But to see him playing field lacrosse, where he's just kind of out there, not nearly as many pads, he's playing in sweatpants and moving around. Really, we knew he was agile to begin with, but moving even better after shedding that weight. It really shows his dedication. I think I even joked with you that it's like how Christian Bale or De Niro or whoever is a method actor. Dylan Ward's like a method lacrosse player, depending on whether he's playing box or field.
Right. Well, and it was so interesting to see, like you said, these players who we're used to seeing in a box lacrosse setting playing field lacrosse. And I know there's obviously differences, but at the same time, it's like, man, it's crazy how diverse they can be between the box lacrosse and field lacrosse.
Yeah, absolutely. And even I think I brought up with you, Blaze Riordan, the goalie for the Team USA. He's not a goalie in the NLL. He's like a forward playing for Philadelphia. So it's the level of skill and diversity and skill set is really impressive.
Yeah, and obviously they wanted to get as many eyes on the tournament as possible. Like I said, they had a lot of their games at Snapdragon Stadium there in San Diego. The first game, in fact, was televised and on a primetime spot between U.S. and Canada, and it was kind of a nice way to kick off the tournament. U.S. actually won 7-5 I mean, they were coming into the tournament one of the top two teams. Expected to do good things during the tournament, and so it was a nice way to kind of kick things off.
Absolutely. And the US, they're pretty dominant, but Canada's definitely the closest thing they have to a rival in the world of lacrosse. So to see them play something hard fought and pretty close was really nice to start off the tournament.
Well, yeah, and so throughout the tournament, I mean, you obviously had like different teams and different countries going against each other. I put in my notes here. There's two teams in particular that not only people were talking about, on the broadcast and stuff like that, but just in the tournament itself. The first one being Jamaica, who went undefeated in pool play, and even somehow upset Italy in the first round of the playoffs. They ended up finishing eighth in the World Lacrosse.
We were saying earlier, cool runnings part two. Just yeah, these non-traditional lacrosse countries really showing up and having impressive standings can only mean good things for the sport in general.
Well, and it shows just how far the reach lacrosse is, like how far lacrosse is reaching these other countries. You think of places, like Jamaica or stuff like that, that maybe don't have access to as many utilities and as much equipment as you would hope, and so they have to learn the sport in their own way.
Right.
And for them to come in and do that, that was kind of impressive.
And the second team that you mentioned was even further away from the US, right across the globe. Japan ended up finishing in fifth. They went 6-1 in the tournament, and some of those wins were truly impressive, including a 23-3 win against Denmark. So hats off to Japan as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I'll say this. I think no matter what sport you play in, you should always take Japan as a serious contender.
Oh yeah.
We saw earlier this year with the World Baseball Classic, and it was Japan and U.S.
Yep.
In the finals for that. So you can never don't ever underestimate Japan. I feel like they're always willing to put up a fight.
Absolutely. Good old Shohei, probably inspiring the rest of his countrymen,
Right?
regardless of the sport.
Well, and then of course, a big highlight of this tournament was Team Haudenosaunee, who had, of course, the Thompson brothers and, like we mentioned earlier, Brooker Murr on their team. They had quite the run, getting up until deep into the playoffs, up until trying to get into the finals. I wrote in my notes though, even the people on the broadcast brought it up. They kind of had a harsh schedule towards the end. They had 7 games in 7 days, and it kind of showed in that last game right before the finals. They ended up kind of running out of gas against Team Canada.
Yeah, regardless of whether it's field or box lacrosse, playing that many games in a short period of time is going to wear you out. So they gave it all they could. It was a valiant effort, but hey, they were able to knock out Australia in the bronze medal game, which is kind of nice because generally speaking, Haudenosaunee and Australia are the two teams that are next up after US and Canada in terms of lacrosse supremacy. So it was great to see them put on a good showing.
Yeah, and it was great showing for them. And of course, I mean, we're always, I'm always excited to see either of the Thompson brothers playing out there. They even had kind of a run in the second half of that game against Canada, but it kind of fell short, by the end of the fourth, which ultimately left Team USA and Team Canada in the finals. Yeah, they were definitely the two best teams, and they were definitely showed it in that final game. Pretty much neck and neck throughout, but Team USA pulled away towards the second half and into the end, held on to the lead, and they ended up taking gold against Canada.
Yeah, it was really fun to see not just NLL players in there, but guys that we don't regularly watch the PLL at this point. So just to see the level of talent all throughout the world of lacrosse. With I know Brennan O'Neill, I don't remember how many goals he scored or was unassisted on, and he's still at Duke, I believe it is, or
Yeah,
yeah, playing collegiately. So just that mix of wily veterans with young guns was really fun to see.
you even mentioned it before. I mean, the USA versus Canada it almost felt kind of like an all-star game for the NLL.
Oh man, yeah, I couldn't believe it. Like you already mentioned Liam Burns and Dylan Ward in net for Canada. I know Ryan Lee, his mammoth teammate, was out there. Jeff Teat, of course. Dane Smith was out there, and he he pretty much dominates the NLL, and it's field lacrosse is more of a team game, but there were
Mhm.
definitely some plays where it's like there's the Great Dane doing Great Dane things,
Pretty
and
much.
then yeah, every almost every team had someone out there. It seemed Tom Schreiber, really good player for the Rock, Zach Currier, the transition player for the Roughnecks
Mhm.
that always tears things up. As you
Who
mentioned,
who we hate. No, I'm just kidding.
right?
We don't hate you. We don't hate you.
And then Blaze Riordan, who from everything I know is one of the best field goaltenders of all time. And thankfully he was in net for us. And then he goes and plays forward with the Wings with his teammate Trevor Baptiste, who was our lead faceoff guy.
Mhm.
So really impressive. Haas's big brother Graham from the Halifax Thunderbirds, Connor Fields from the Rochester Nighthawks. It seemed like half of the San Diego Seals roster was there playing what was essentially a home game
Mhm.
with Brody Merrill, Danny Logan, Curtis Dixon, probably a lot of other guys that I'm forgetting the name, but yeah, just seeing all these familiar faces playing a different flavor of lacrosse was pretty cool.
Well, and you mentioned a lot of players from San Diego. It almost makes you think because as we've seen a lot of players go back to Canada in the off season and either play for another team or some players actually take the off season and rest. Um, but it makes me think like, did they just stay in town for an extra month? They were like, we'll be back at working again.
Yeah, that's a good question. And what they have this tournament is it every 4 years?
I believe so. I believe it's every 4 years as well.
Okay, so yeah, I don't know whether they're going to host in San Diego again, but certainly worked out for those guys with the familiarity.
Yeah, well, and it was like I said, it was just kind of awesome to see not only players that we recognize out there, but just again the sport of lacrosse getting more exposure, continuing to grow. I actually do have a question. I didn't even write this down. Do you feel like something like this should happen with box lacrosse, where maybe they do a box lacrosse World Classic?
That's a great question. Box certainly hasn't been around quite as long as field on an international stage. I imagine if they did do something on this level, Canada would probably dominate the same way the US dominates right now. The reason we're seeing the US do so well in field is because obviously it's a bigger country, bigger talent pool to come from, and they're just as familiar with the field game as a country like Canada. Whereas with box, Canada has a clear upper hand, which is why it's great to have teams like San Diego, the Georges Forum, and Panther City to help grow the sport down here. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but
Yeah.
I think it'd be great to have, if not something in the near future, then hopefully something within the next 10 years.
I don't know. I just think of other ways you can kind of get kind of like a world stage or world
Hmm.
teams to go against each other because again, that's how you're going to, help those other countries understand and pay attention and watch, hey, even though I might not watch lacrosse that much, I know my country is being represented over there, so I'm going to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does make you wonder, like, hey, Japan or Jamaica or Israel or
Hmm.
whatever other country, you're pretty good at field. Have you tried this flavor of the sport?
Right. Well, and I guess you kind of brought it up earlier. I guess the only downside of having like a tournament, a box lacrosse tournament like that on the world for a world stage would be the risk of having possibly more injuries in the off
Oh, yes.
season, which again, I feel like a lot of players already play for other teams in the off season. So
Hmm.
you kind of run that risk already. I don't know. It's like weighing it and saying, okay, what's the positives, what's the negatives, and are the positives more than the negatives? I don't know.
Yeah, schedule wise, you'd probably have to do something like what the Olympics do with the summer games and the winter games, where they could never fall in the same year.
Hmm. For sure. And so, I mean, just food for thought. That just kind of like popped in my head. I was like, man, that would be kind of cool if they tried something like that in the future. But, as like I said before, it was great to see this world tournament. It was great to see these other countries represented, and it was great to see just lacrosse in general. Getting more exposure not only in other countries but in the U.S. as well.
Absolutely, it makes you excited for things to come.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, congrats to Team USA. I mean, great showing throughout. Great showing in the final. So that's something they can hang their hat on, at least for the off season, and then until the next world tournament comes along. So hats off to Team USA for winning gold on that. We go from the World Lacrosse Classic, or sorry, not the World Lacrosse Classic. That's baseball. The World Lacrosse Championship, to some Panther City news. So again, it's been a while since we talked about Panther City and what they've been doing in the off season. Well, something came around newsworthy, and we're here to talk about it. Coach TK signs an extension with Panther City. The first thing I noticed is they actually didn't say any specifics, but they just said it's a multi-year extension.
Yeah, we'll take it. He's done a bang up job so far with the team. I don't know how long his original contract was for, but knowing that we've locked him up is not only good for the team in general on the field or on the floor, but for the city of Fort Worth as well, and what box lacrosse can mean to it.
Right, and it's good to know that he's going to be here for a while. I mean, as you mentioned, he's done a great job. First season, obviously, Coach of the Year, NLL Awards, Coach of the Year, getting on, pretty much taking a team that nobody expected to do anything and getting them on the verge of trying to make the playoff run towards the end of the year. And then in his second year, what does he do? He gets them in the playoffs. And not only that, but he has, like we talked about a few months ago, he has a great showing in the playoffs to say, hey, even though we lost, we're still a young team, but that doesn't mean, that doesn't mean anything. That means we're on the right track.
Definitely. They're only going to get better with time and that continuity of having Coach TK there. Not just Coach TK, but Coach Steve Toll, who really did a nice job in the playoffs as well, having to fill in for TK when he was out. So just having those same voices in the locker room as those players grow and get better and their understanding improves, it'll make things really promising for Panther City going forward.
Well, and you kind of touched on it, like, because I asked, like, in the notes, what does this mean for the team going forward? As far as being uh, a continuation of being the coach for them, and not having anything change dramatically. I mean, what do you see that goes for not only the team but those players as well?
I think I think they resonate with him. Like when you watch those little clips that the social team puts on of his locker room talks, when you go to games live or watch them on TV and you see him on the sidelines being fired up, he always keeps the intensity level high, and he does it in such a way that the players, they don't seem to negatively respond and like go into a shell. They actually play well, play better, play aggressively. And so I think he's so far it's really been a perfect fit these first two seasons.
Yeah, for sure. And you see this a lot in other sports, and it gives you a little bit of peace of mind. But it lets you know, hey, there's not going to be huge changes from one year to the next, at least anytime soon. Sometimes, when a coach is on a certain contract and it's getting towards the end of it or something, and they either don't restructure it, or something happens and they decide to part ways, you see things just fluctuate and change, and
Right.
you see players get moved from here to there, and at least we know for the next few years there's not going to be any huge changes like that.
Yeah, we won't be going through a coaching carousel like some teams in the sporting world have to go through from season to season. And it'll be nice to see. I'm assuming Jason Knox will join the team, the first round selection from next year,
Hmm.
integrating him in. Donville only getting better. Dodds and vets like Caputo and Crawford really helping out as well. Yeah, I'm itching for next season to start.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, these last few months, I've definitely, it's like something's missing. I know there is something that's missing, and it's just not here yet.
Mhm.
But yeah, speaking of Crawford, I mean, I know they highlighted him kind of on the social media this last week, talking about just like missing his goals and stuff like that. I mean, do you feel like this kind of move makes him want to stick around? I mean, obviously, that's the ultimate decision isn't up to him; it's up to the team whether they want to move him around or anything like that. But does that make him a little bit more comfortable having that person that he's known for so long still there as a coach?
I'd like to think so. I think the proximity, and two, the familiarity will really work in Panther City's favor in getting him to stick around and play another season, or well, however many seasons that he feels his body is willing to take. When
Hmm.
he appeared on the Back of the Bird podcast with our Panther City's own John Donville, it was nice to hear him kind of talk about, like, yeah, he liked playing in New York and everything, but just the travel was so tough for him, having his home base in Oklahoma.
Hmm.
And whereas playing for us, he can basically drive to the games, or take a quick flight down to play. So having his former teammate and a guy he gets along with, and Coach TK there, only kind of sweetens the pot for him.
Well, and not only that, but like again, knowing TK for as long as he has, maybe not playing with him the entire time, but knowing him, he knows his philosophy. He knows what he
Hmm.
expects, and so he can
Right.
relay that sometimes on the field better than even Coach TK can.
And at this point, both those guys are hungry for a championship. One from a coaching perspective, and one from playing perspective. So that really be the cherry on top of both of their careers.
Yeah, and I know Crawford's, probably thinking towards the end of his kind of career here, and maybe doesn't, like you said, doesn't want to have to travel all the time and be away from his family all the time, and so this makes it more convenient. But if we can keep him for another few years and get some good seasons out of him, you never know what might happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And who knows? Whenever he does decide to hang it up, maybe there's something in the coaching tree, or the front office, that'll be available for him.
Yeah,
Just speaking aloud, no
right,
pressure or
right.
anything to the management team.
Yeah, he could sneak in there and be like a special counsel to the coaching
Right.
staff. Like,
Yeah.
hey, we're gonna bounce some ideas off of you, and you can tell us what you think. But yes, getting that news, seeing Coach TK sign an extension, uh, honestly, thank you, Coach TK, for doing that because we look forward to seeing what you have in store not only for Panther City but just for the city of Fort Worth and the Fort Worth Dallas area as a whole.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Coach TK. Looking forward
Yeah.
to see what the future has to bring.
Oh, I'm feeling some good vibes for this next season. I mean, year one to year two was one thing, but year two to year three, if we keep on that track, I don't know, man. I'm smelling a home playoff game at some point in the near future, and I can only wait for that.
I'm smelling the playoff win.
Ooh, there you go. Hey. Well, all we have to do is win one game, get a series of three, and then best out of three in the next round. So, which, again, I feel like they should maybe change a little bit. But hey, that's conversation for another time. But, well, of course, as summer goes on, I know this was kind of a shorter episode this time. Not a whole lot of news going on, but we definitely wanted to touch base, give our input on a few things. Obviously, with the World Lacrosse Championship going on and Coach TK signing an extension. But as the summer goes on, we'll be sure to update as much as we can. Like I said, usually about once a month we'll get a good short episode like this. Get together any information that's might have happened. Of course, we have some more interviews on tap the rest of the off season, leading into season 3 for Panther City. But of course, we thank everybody for listening. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm Nicholas.
And I'm off-season Andy.
Off-season Andy. Hey, off-season Andy and off-season Nicholas, I think, have seen more vacation time and more sun than we have at all in the past season. But that's not a bad thing. That's a really good thing. But thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time. Well, we were almost done with the episode. Andy, we had recorded just a few days ago and had wrapped up and thought, hey, we caught up on some slow moving news, and here's some things that have been going on. Thinking, okay, we'll take another few weeks off, see what else happens in the off season. Literally 2 days later, we're back here recording because we got a bombshell of news for Panther City. And honestly, I mean, if you watch us on social media and stuff like that, I'm kind of in shock.
Yeah, it is pretty surprising what we not quite woke up to this morning, but what we found out today.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, what a better way to process it than to hop on the podcast and discuss our thoughts.
Air our opinions and grievances. I don't know. I don't know how you want to word that, but yeah. So breaking news. I mean, this is Tuesday the 11th that we hopped on. I mean, the same day that we got this news. Huge trade between Panther City and Saskatchewan. Panther City got from Saskatchewan a fifth overall 2023 draft pick, a conditional second round draft pick for 2024 or 2025, because that includes the rights to try to sign Matt Beers from Saskatchewan. In return, we send them a conditional third round pick for either the 2024 or 2025 draft, depending on if a certain player stays with them. And those two players that we gave them, one Cameron Wingriniak, who I think for us was kind of a good 6-man player. Got in some good minutes, got in some good offensive plays this year. But the one that kind of shocked us all, Patrick Dodds to Saskatchewan.
Yeah, it's the team has only been around 2 seasons, but for certainly the first season, the inaugural season, Patrick Dodds was really a star for the team and someone who we thought would probably be a star for years to come.
Right. And yeah, I mean, speaking about that first year, I mean, he was the first player, not only because he was in running for rookie of the year that year, but just like the way he played and his energy. And we thought, yeah, same thing. I thought this is somebody who is going to be a crucial part of this team in years to come. And I don't know. I don't know how to process it, I guess. Like on one side, I trust Tracy Koleski, I trust that office, and I trust what they're trying to build for Panther City. But at the same time, it's like my heart hurts because Dodds was, I think, a really big part of the team. Obviously, all of his teammates talked great about him. But we did see kind of him this last season, especially the second half of the season, more or less become more of the second, not the second string, but just not in the main offensive rotation.
Yeah, I think when you see that Donville had a great rookie year, Crawford came in mid-season, Malcolm really had a breakthrough year too. Will Malcolm, that is. I don't think the way the offense was structured and given everyone's skill sets as a whole, that Dodsey's own skill set as an offensive player were quite maximized, because he definitely played a lot more off ball than he did the previous year, where he was essentially in that Donville role, setting up the offense and whatnot. And so in that sense, I can see the front office wanting to get value for him while what he accomplished in his rookie year was fresh in people's minds, and knowing the potential that he still has for the rest of his career, because I'd say the sky's the limit for him.
Right, and that's actually brings us to the point of why Saskatchewan might maybe targeted him and trying to get him in the trade, because Saskatchewan, for more or less during the offseason, is cleaning things out from last season. They're saying, hey, we're going to scratch that season. We're going to start with some younger talent. We're going to make some trades. They've been making trades, it seems like, every 2 or 3 weeks, just like little trades here and there. But this is the first big one they've had, and it kind of sets up the idea that they're trying to get that younger team in there and build something almost from scratch just to start over again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Dodds certainly gives them that piece and a bit of versatility. And honestly, I know he might be kind of seen as more of a toss-in player, but Cameron Greniuk really had some great moments for us as well.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he came off the bench, I think, in every game he played this season, but I really liked the power he put between each of his shots, because they were the kind there wasn't much trickery about them. It was just basically a really strong dude rearing up and getting it into the net. So losing those two pieces, when Greniuk and Doddsey, I think it does hurt, but given all the offensive depth that the team has, and knowing that last season we traded Chad Cummings, we traded Liam Burns.
Mhm.
I can see GM Hamley wanting to shore up our defense.
Right, and that's actually so we had somebody message us on Instagram. In fact, I can bring up that message real quick, but basically saying the same thing. Like, why would we trade this? Like, what's the purpose of the trade? And it's one of those things to talk about. Just like, yes, our offense was really started clicking in that second half of the season last year, but our defense really suffered in that second half, and you could see kind of a drop off as the season went on, and so they know that's an area they need to get stronger in. And so while losing a name like Dodds and even when Griniak, while losing those teammates and for Panther City kind of stings a little bit, uh, it goes back to my initial statement. I really do believe that Coach TK and that front office have an idea on what they want to do offensively and defensively, and that includes trying to get that defense on par with the offense.
Yeah, Matt Beers, I think we looked it up. He's a 13-year veteran. He was named to the rookie team his first season back when Washington was still around.
Mm-hmm.
And based on what I'm seeing, he was actually ranked number 3 in the league last year among blocks. So yeah, he might be up there a little in age, but he still gets it done on the defensive end.
Well, and that's what they really need. They need to strengthen that defensive side. I mean, I think losing, our defensive people last year kind of put us in a hole a little bit, and we weren't able to get out of it by the end of the season. We thought our offense would be strong enough to kind of fill that void, but unfortunately, when playoffs came around, we saw where, offense was great, but we needed that defense to stifle up towards the end there, and we just didn't have it. And so having the rights, and it's not even that we signed Beers, we have the rights to sign him. That's why I mentioned earlier it's a conditional draft pick, because if Beers decides to sign with somebody else, we get that draft pick for the 2024 or 2025 draft as a condition of that. And so obviously I hope he signs with us, because I think Tracy wants that added he got that veteran leadership last year through Crawford on the offense. Now I think he wants that for somebody on the defense.
Right, and it's funny. I was trying to look it up and see if Coach TK and Beers were previous teammates. I don't believe they were in this case, which is pretty impressive considering the long careers each of them had. But yeah, like you said, this really is a move that puts us in a position to have a solid offseason, have a good training camp with the guys, and then go into next season with what you would expect would be full strength offense and defense. Hopefully there won't be as much in-season movement as there was this past year. Of course, anything can happen depending on what the results on the field look like. But for now, the main thing is seeing if Beers will sign with us.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like I said, that's why I hope it works out that way, because obviously if you move that many pieces and move players who a lot of Panther City fans like latched onto. I mean, I'll say this: I feel like a lot of Panther City fans from the first year latched onto Dodds just because of that rookie season he had,
Right.
and thought like, oh man, this is going to be great for our team, and then to kind of move a maybe not an important piece in the overall idea of what you're trying to build for that team, but a piece just in the short term minds of the fans like that is, again, you just it makes you wonder. I think it made the fans. I mean, I saw a lot of outpour of just like support for Dawes and
Mm-hmm.
good luck in the future and stuff like that. But I also saw a lot of people just like questioning, like, what the heck? Why are we doing this? I mean, some WTFs going on in there, but uh, it gets a mixed reaction, and honestly, the hardest moves get those kind of reactions. So I don't know. I guess my question to you would be, because I sent you that message right when it happened. I mean, what was your initial like reaction to it?
I thought, oh shoot, Patrick Dodds. that's a guy that we've seen a lot of over the not just this past season, but even going into the first year too. And
Mhm.
like we mentioned, rookie of the year runner up to Jeff Teat that first season. Last year, he wasn't the as much of the guy as he was that first season, but he was still a great contributor. To his credit, he kind of took a backseat in that playmaking role, but still really talented. And so to see, well, I'll put it this way: last season, all our trades involved defensive players who just through the nature of things aren't as maybe at least for me don't quite have the same glamour or name recognition that a lot of offensive players do, because the offensive players, just like in basketball or
Mhm.
quarterbacks or whatever, they're the ones putting points on the board for the most part. And so to see one of our offensive quote unquote stars get traded like that, it is pretty jarring. I know we traded Jake Fox um after getting him for like a cup of coffee last year.
Right,
And
right.
so it's kind of like, oh, okay. Well, that's that. But Dodds has been around with the team since their inception. So yeah, it was a lot of like, look, am I reading this correctly
Yeah.
and whatnot? But once I kind of settle in and think about all the depth we have in terms of Donville, Caputo, Crawford, Brennan,
Mhm.
it then starts to make a bit more sense.
Well, and you had mentioned it before, just when we recorded a few days ago. We also have, the draft coming up. Who knows what we
Yes.
can get in that? Not only that, but another rookie that we drafted last year.
Yes.
Um, so like the pieces are there to continue to add up for the team. It's just sometimes you have to make difficult decisions, and that's why they make the big bucks, as they like to say. Because I mean, I don't know if that's a decision I could have made, but
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny to think the games last season when we were like, oh, this defense, the continuity isn't there because of the moves they've made, or
mhm.
they need to improve on that side. And this is a move that they're making that will hopefully improve that, assuming Beers does want to play, or we at least draft people that can help us out on that side in a season or two's time. But kind of seeing it in action, it's like, oh yay, we got a defensive player potentially. Oh, we had to give this up for him.
Mhm.
So in that sense,
Well,
definitely a reality call,
yeah,
reality
and
check.
for Saskatchewan, I mean, obviously, like I said, they're trying to build a certain team there. We're trying to build a certain team here as far as structure and what we have on the offense and defense side. And so, I think both teams kind of got what they were trying to hope for. Saskatchewan, a younger team, a younger players that can get those minutes in and kind of affect it in the future. And then, for us, getting that defensive star, hopefully, that will help us even go even further into the season. Um, I mean, I've heard of Beers. I haven't looked into him that much, but like you said, he is a veteran presence. Obviously has a ton of experience. So it's something else that, like I said, he can bring to the defensive side that I think Crawford can bring to he brought to the offensive side.
And yeah, and it's interesting because Saskatchewan, if I'm remembering correctly, even though they beat us in our, I want to say we only had one matchup with them.
Yeah, I think so this
I might
year.
be getting them
Let
mixed
me
up
see.
with the Nighthawks or something. But from what I remember, they beat us early on in the season, and then they ended up not qualifying for the playoffs.
Right.
So yeah, they're certainly trying to make moves to improve their team and whatnot, and maybe potentially going into a rebuild with younger guys like Dodds and Wingreniuk.
Yeah.
So hopefully it benefits both teams, but not enough to bump the Rush above the standings.
Right, right. Well, and hopefully, like I said, this is all for the great quote unquote greater good going forward into next season. But uh Andy, yeah, I saw that today and I was like, hey, can you hop on? And he was like, yep, I can hop on. and we just wanted to kind of give some insight. So hopefully, no more breaking bombshell news between now and like the next 2 or 3 weeks, because I don't know if I can take another big trade like that. But no, I felt like it was something we needed to touch on just because Dodds was a key player for Panther City, especially in that first year and then going into last year. And Cameron Griniak, I mean, we wish you both the best in Saskatchewan.
Indeed, yeah. Best of luck to y'all guys, and we'll see if we'll be welcoming Matt Beers to the team. And
well, hopefully so. And honestly, whenever we go against Saskatchewan next year, if it's a home game, that's gonna be very awkward. I mean, not super awkward, but whenever a bigger player comes back to the team he used to play for, it always has that weird feeling to it at first. But
right, I think the only guy it happened with this year, I don't remember whether we played Cummings.
Well,
again.
I will say this: after we traded Fox over to Albany, we faced him again. Like 2 weeks later.
Yeah, we ended up playing him, and then we didn't play the Swarm last year, so we didn't face Jeremy Thompson again.
No.
So
well, and depending on the rotation and how they do that schedule wise, I'm sure we'll run into him next year or something. I don't know. We might play there, honestly, but
yeah.
Anyway, well, thank you again for hopping on real quick. Thank you all again for listening. We appreciate everything you guys do. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Once again, I am last minute Nicholas. Just got off work. I mean, I'm still in my work clothes. So, but yes, I am Nicholas.
And I am breaking news off-season Andy.
There we go, breaking news. And thank you guys. We'll see you next time.
Sweet. Cheers, y'all.